welcome to the Gridiron Football Player of the Year show. I am your host, Jace, LeJeune, and I'm joined with Coach Benjamin Hall, who's actually a new member of the Gridiron Football family. So you're going to be seeing a lot of Ben around the springtime as we get ready for camps coming up and a lot of exciting stuff coming up. So Ben, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you here at Gridiron Football.
Again, my name is Benjamin Hall. I originally from the Baton Rouge area, played high school football locally, played at Christian Life Academy, graduated in the 2000s, around 2005. Then I got to play a little bit of college football from there. Went and played a little bit as an invited walk-on at Southeastern Louisiana University, which I know you know real well.
You lined up.
Your background. Then went to play at Belhaven University for a little bit. Then experienced a little stint at University of South Alabama, and then went back to Belhaven University and had some health problems and body injury problems of the game, and then got right into high school coaching. I just football is about relationships. I know you know that, being a coach's son, and I know you know the game of football. It's been that for however many years this game's been around, is just impacting people. And so I got right into high school coaching. Coached with a guy who became my mentor, named Coach Jason McClendon, who was a nephew of Charlie McClendon, or the great nephew. And he was at Christian Life Academy where I played at, and we met there. And he was coaching under that time a gentleman named Coach Warren Capone, who's a great player for Catholic High and the Catholic High Bears. And then I went on to play at LSU for Coach Charlie McClendon and did a great job in my alma mater to Christian Life, turning them around. And then coached with him at Christian Life. And then after that, went over to Woodlawn High School, first stint with Don Jones, where I got to be around a guy that really has a really impact to a lot of people, a lot of players, a lot of administrators throughout the state. Was around Coach Jones, Don Jones at Woodlawn for a little bit back in 2010, and then went to St. Michael's at the beginning of 2010 season with Coach Eric Held, who is a man I respect the utmost of. To me, I will tell anybody this is one of the best special teams minds I have ever met in football. Great coach. I mean, people saw what he did at St. Michael's and the turnaround he did there, and then he went on to Catholic High with Coach Gabe Fertitta and did an incredible job there, and they won some state championships. So I get to coach under Eric Hale for 3 years with a lot of great coaches over there, coaches like Aaron Weiss and Paul Varnado and David Neubauer and Jonathan Lane, a lot of great guys who had all come from the Redemptress background or connections to Redemptress of what Sid Edwards used to do there. And so you got to really hear a lot of that Sid Edwards philosophy. And then after that, went back to my alma mater. So I was at St. Michael's for 2010, 2012. Then went back to Christian Life with my high school coach, Keith Dooley, who played high school football in Alabama, which we all know Alabama's a big high school football state. And he had played in the competitions of Hoover High and schools like that, and actually coached at Hoover High for a stint. Been around a lot of real big Alabama high school football, so I coached under him in 2013. Then in 2014, I actually worked with Andy, and me and Andy met actually at LSU. I ended up, after I got hurt in college, I went back to LSU to finish my bachelor's degree, and the Lord, I'm a faith believer. Sometimes doors opens for the rightful purpose, and purpose was I was meant to go back to LSU and get my degree there, and there I got to meet a good friend named Andy Bryson, and while I was there, Andy obviously was in the middle of finishing up his degree and he had just interned with Coach Nader, so got to be around Andy, meet him, and so after at St. Michael's, like I said, I was at Christian Life with my high school coach Keith Dooley. In 2014 was around football with Andy, and then a good friend of mine, or a great coach that I will always respect so much of because he really understood leadership skills at a high level, was Ben Palmer, and he came to Christian Life in 2015, and I just came from Calvary, and we got to coach together 2015, and then 2016 I went to Falls River Academy with Darren Moore, who I met at Christian Life, who played for Dennis Dunn at LC. at Louisiana College, and Dunn's a great ambassador to the state in football. Did a lot of great things at Evangel Christian Academy. And then after that, went back to my alma mater in 2017, coached with Dexter Alexander, who played actually for Coach Eric Holden.
Yep.
And I'm a great man I respect the utmost of. Was actually one of my high school coaches, and a man I will tell anybody is just a true leader to football. And then 2018, I stayed on at Christian Life after Coach Alexander pursued elsewhere. Coach Marcus Randall came in, and I met Coach Marcus Randall out at Woodlawn in that summer of 2010, and we started a friendship, and we actually were training some quarterbacks privately together before he got the job, and then he got the Church Academy job, which became the new ownership titleship from Christian Life, and so we got to coach together. And then 2019, after the school closed down, the Church Academy shut down, we moved over to Woodlawn. And, I got to coach with Coach Randall, Coach Tremont Douglas, a great man, James McCray, people like that I will always, speak so high of. And there were so many others, but, through all, went about 10-year stint of experienced high school coaching. And then, I got in business with my brother years back for baseball. My brother was an All-American baseball player at Southern University named Fraser Hall. And then he was drafted by the Anaheim Angels, played for Roger Kadar at Southern, and then got to play in the minor league system for Arizona Diamondbacks, Anaheim Angels. And so I worked with my brother for a stint. And so I've been involved with sports most of my life. My dad actually would have never moved down here to Louisiana if it wasn't for football. My dad's from Colorado. He actually moved all the way from Colorado to Monroe to play college football for John David Crow. So, this state's a very important state to my dad and my family. And so, yeah, football has always been a sports part of my genes, and it really impacts people altogether.
Yeah, and that's a lot of names that you went over, right? A lot of really good big football names. Jason McClendon, have the same tutelage, that same bloodline as Charlie McClendon. Was a legend at LSU. Actually was the winningest coach for a long time until Les Miles being the winningest coach. And then obviously Marcus Randall, being around him, former LSU quarterback, the Bluegrass miracle quarterback that a lot of people like to say about him, and going through Dennis Dunn, and a lot of really big football names. So you've been a part with a lot of different really big names there. Eric Held as well. So a lot of really big names. But and which makes it perfect because this is the Player of the Year show, and I'm glad that you're able to come and help me out with that. And we actually, myself and Ben, we actually narrowed down this whole past year. I know Ben just came on board with us and is going to be doing a lot of really good stuff here for Gridiron Football. But every week we had a Player of the Week, and it was actually voted on by the fans. They got to vote on the Player of the Week each and every week, and it turns out whoever voted the most, they were the Player of the Week. So this is the second year we've done this. Last year we actually had our first Player of the Year that we did, and last year's winner, Ben, was DeWandae Winfield, who was at Letcher High School in Louisiana, and he's now playing for the Raging Cajuns. He's playing football there at quarterback. So he was our Player of the Year last year. This year we decided to expand a little bit, so it's not just Louisiana. We try to go into, now it's going to be mostly the names we're about to call for our 25 nominees are Louisiana guys, but we have some Texas guys, we have Alabama guys, so we're trying to broaden up the spectrum a little bit, widen the gap. So that's what we're going to try to do. And Ben, you're actually going to be one of the first of many to hear our final 25 nominees. So in case if you're a nominee, this is what you had to be. So you had to be, if you're a Player of the Week this year at any point, you're automatically nominated to be a Player of the Year candidate. So that's the first thing. Number two, you had to have been at least nominated at least once or twice by your coach to be a Player of the Week, and have been really good all year. And number three, if you weren't nominated but you were a Gridiron Football All-American that played in our bowl game, that was the third criteria. So these are the three criteria that you had to take in order to be a Player of the Year candidate. So it's going to be big, Ben. The next week is going to be, we're going to open to voting. So y'all, the fans, will get to decide who the Player of the Year is going to be. We'll have a countdown next week. We'll have a whole week where you can vote for the player of the year. And just in case, okay, what do you get if you win? There has to be some kind of prize at the end, right, Ben?
Right.
So what we're going to do is, if you were a player of the week, you actually get a scout, those patches you get on your letterman jacket.
Oh, yeah.
So they'll get a chance. They'll have a Gridiron Football Player of the Week letterman patch. But if you're the Gridiron Football Player of the Year, you get another patch. So you get a chance to put that on your letterman jacket. So it'll be a Gridiron Football Player of the Year letterman jacket patch. So that's going to be pretty good to put on your letterman jacket. So.
Yeah, I tell you what, what this business has done has really been impact football together. And, I actually coached against, we shared this to each other when we first met, but I coached against your dad, many times.
Yeah. Yep.
And, coming from his bloodline, this is what football is. And, we've just got some great talent in our state. One thing about this state is you've got players that have really good instincts in football. And that's where you see from top to bottom. That's what colleges coming here recruiting a lot of that. Because when you can find a player that's got great instinctive ability, plus he's got an ability athletically, that's a good combination,
Yeah.
And there's many players that are under the scope, athletes that come out of the state that often you would never know they're there, and it's like that saying, the diamond in the rough players, and this is obviously a big opportunity for guys to get their exposure, and this candidacy is going to be a huge amount of great talent that you're going to be able to talk about.
Absolutely. We're going to go over the names real quick. I'll get your reaction too. We'll talk after I go through the stats and stuff. You'll probably get appreciation on it, but it's a good mixture, Ben. It's a good mixture of guys that are the LSU guys, like the 5-star, 4-star guys on this list. But there's also a lot of diamonds in the rough, like you mentioned, guys that are going under the radar, kind of slipping through the cracks of the recruiting world. But it's a good mix here. You get a chance to finally get to know the names. So we're going to really go into it, Ben, because I know everybody's wondering who the names are for a Player of the Year. So the first candidate, and now this is no particular order, but we're actually going to go down the list here. So we have our first candidate for Player of the Year is Juwan Johnson. He's from LCA, Lafayette Christian Academy in Lafayette. He actually signed with LSU, so he's going to be an LSU Tiger.
Wow.
But this year, he was actually, he's coming back after last year. Last year he was a runner-up for the Player of the Year. So he has a chance to actually win the Player of the Year this year. 3,597 yards passing and 41 touchdowns passing, but he's a dual threat too. He actually got 1,497 yards rushing and 25 touchdowns. You put that all together, he accounted for 5,094 yards and 66 total touchdowns. And I know that you're a Dennis Dunn guy. You like Dennis Dunn. Actually, Juwan Johnson set an all-time Louisiana high school football record this year.
Wow. Most
touchdowns and yards accounted for, and the guy he beat was Josh Booty. So those are some, actually not Josh Booty, it was another Evangel Christian quarterback, Brock Berlin. Brock Berlin was the record. Berlin. So Brock Berlin, he beat his record this year. So talk about really a guy who puts video game numbers up, Juwan Johnson. And he was as good as anybody's ever been coming through the state of Louisiana.
And that's still head coach over at Lafayette Christian. Is it still Coach Falk?
Yeah, it was Coach Falk.
It was Coach Falk.
Yep.
Okay, he was there for quite. And I'm still getting back in the loop of football. Yep. He built such a great program. I mean, a lot of people don't even understand or might not know that he started that program from scratch years back. So whatever he built, it really started a pedestal of consistency in that program. And I remember the quarterback, I actually, when I coached with Darren Moore, who coached with Dunn and played for Dunn, we scrimmaged them when I was at Falls River, and I remember they had a really talented quarterback, and I think it was like their second or third year of an active program, and they got that thing moving and building, and it really is showing now the kind of players that are coming out of there, the type of player development that they're putting in that system that is allowing, when you put that player development in the system, that these kind of players are coming out on the field.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's going to be a good one. Now, LSU trying to make him a DB, not a quarterback, but Hey, I mean, he's shown that he can put up yards and numbers as a quarterback. You never know how those things go, but we'll see where he stacks up at LSU. Should be interesting to see where they put him. The next nominee was our Gridiron Football Player of the Week in Week 2. Like you said, if you're a Player of the Week candidate at any point, you're going to be automatically nominated for a Player of the Year slot. So we actually go into Texas for this one. Westwood High School in Texas. He's a 2026 wide receiver. His name is Kason Dial. He was actually our first ever out-of-state Player of the Week. He finished the year on 48 catches for 754 yards and 9 touchdowns. But he was Player of the Week back in Week 2 when he had 6 catches for 161 yards and 3 touchdowns, and also a 80-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. So that helped him get that Player of the Week. So Kason, you're a second nominee there. We go back to our third nominee, go back to Louisiana, and this is going to be another guy where LSU fans hope to get. His name is Harlem Berry. He's a running back from St. Martin's Episcopal. I know you're a quarterback guy, Ben. But this is a guy, he's actually the #1 running back in America. He's from Louisiana. He's still got another year. But this past year, he ran for 2,080 yards rushing and 37 touchdowns. He averaged 13 yards a carry. Every time he touched the ball, it seems like he guaranteed a first down with him. He got averaged 13 yards a carry, 20 catches of 400 yards and 7 touchdowns. You put that together, Ben, he had 2,481 yards and 44 touchdowns as a running back. So he is a Gridiron Football Player of the Year nominee. That's some impressive numbers right there.
Yeah, I tell you, when it comes to playing that running back position, being able to catch the ball and run the ball, it's so important to the position. And sometimes when not often do you find it, in today's era of football, they have a lot of that type of player where it can go both sides of that ability because they're such a great athletic type of running back we're seeing in today's era of football. But that's a great program that produces great athletes. So they're consistent on the type of athlete they've produced throughout the years.
Yep, but we're happy to say we're going back to the passing game with this one for this nominee. It's actually a guy I've run about a whole lot. And speaking of Evangel Christian, it's actually an Evangel Christian player. And the reason I slipped up on Josh Booty before and not Brock Berlin was because this is actually Josh Booty's son, our next nominee.
Wow.
Parker Fulgham. He's actually going to play at Clemson next year at wide receiver, not quarterback, especially with all the booties and has been there. So he's kind of taken after Abram, his uncle, really, as the wide receiver part. But he had him and his brother, Peyton, formed a really good 1-2 punch. Their other son, Josh Booty's son. So Peyton and Parker. Parker's a receiver. He gets the nominee here. But he had himself some impressive numbers at Evangel Christian this past year. 69 catches, 1,317 yards, and 17 touchdowns. So very impressive numbers as a wide receiver. And he got on this list for being our Player of the Week in Week 4. He had 252 yards and 3 touchdowns receiving against Bossier. So no matter if it's throwing the football or catching the ball, that the Evangel Christian, they certainly know how to do it.
Yeah, they've had an incredible history of that, and they've done a great job of just having so much different style players, but they are the one thing they always are that have come out of Evangel is consistent, and that's a huge part of football. If you got consistency, that kind of makes the game slow down a little bit, and they've produced a lot of really consistent high school players throughout the years at that receiver position, quarterback position. But they've had a lot of good success.
Absolutely, and it was like they're building that program right back up. So they're going back to some of the successful teams they've had in the past. I know Denny Duran's the head coach over there now, but somebody Evangel Christian's been going back to their winning ways. Now we go to our next player nominee, Gridiron Football Player of the Year nominee, and we actually go into Lafayette for this one. But again, another quarterback. I mean, you want to get a lot of offensive players on this list. His name's Cavante Landry from Lafayette High School, and Garrett Kramer is his head coach. And Garrett Kramer was actually another Evangel. He went to Evangel for a couple of years over there. But this is a dual threat type of guy, all-purpose type of guy. So he had 2,337 total yards of offense and 27 touchdowns. He had 13 throwing and he actually had 13 rushing, but he also had a touchdown catch. So he kind of did it all. So he was a triple threat for Lafayette. He had 1,600 yards passing, 490 yards rushing, and 173 yards receiving. So this is a guy that can do a little bit of everything for Lafayette.
Yeah, that talent area of Lafayette is got a. They've had a large amount, but they got some of the most competitive talent or competitive football and talent in that area. And I mean that in slang more state when I say competitive talent, because they have guys that are really gritty football players out there. You know, they have some of the better athletes in our state come out of that city. They also have some very good programs too. So when you're competing as a player, you're not just going against programs. You're going against programs that are contending for state championships and contending for runs in the playoffs every year. So that really prepares you as an athlete, and that kid's got a lot of athletic ability.
Yeah, we mentioned 2 Lafayette quarterbacks already from that area, Jawan Johnson and now Cavante Landry. And Landry still has another year. He's a 2025 prospect. Now, our next player is actually a guy you've actually seen at our camp, most recently at Covington High School. So he's actually a running back. It is that, and I know you would probably probably know where I'm coming with this. But Chad Elsie Jr., he's a running back from Ascension Catholic High School. Very good player. So I actually covered him a whole lot, calling a lot of his games, and he's still got another year, which is even scary. But 2,911 yards rushing and 47 touchdowns. Altogether, you include receiving, kick returning, all of that. 3,468 yards and 50 on the dot, 50 total touchdowns this past year. And there was one game this year, he had 9 touchdowns in one game, which is incredible. Incredible numbers. And this is a guy with still another year. It's pretty scary what he could possibly do his senior year, and that was his junior year numbers.
Yeah, that kid, I got to see him at the camp that we had a couple weeks ago at Covington High, and he is a special player. He has got some quick feet, and he's also got good cutting ability. Something that's very important when you play running back. He can also catch the football, from what I saw in the camp, and we were doing 7-on-7 during the camp, and he's got really some stuff you see in that those little smaller scat backs that catch a linebacker off guard often.
Yeah, you kind of need that nowadays. And in this age of football, you need to know how not only run, but you need to catch, and you need to know how to block. So you have to be an all-purpose back nowadays, especially in today's world of football. And yeah, Chad Elsie Jr. was one of the top performers of our camp, and you go to GridironFootballUSA.com. We'll have a magazine coming out pretty soon talking about some of our camp performers, top camp performers, and he certainly was one of them that was at that camp. Now we're going to Texas again, and it's actually a Hutto High School we're going to go to in Texas. And he's a wide receiver, and he's going to play, right now I believe he is a Tulsa commit. His name's Alex Green, but he put up some eye-popping numbers this year. He had 101 catches in high school, which is insane. 2,056 yards receiving, 19 touchdowns. That individual season he had was the top 10 all-time in Texas. Single season receiving yards that he did this past year. And when he was a Gridiron Football Player of the Week back in week 7, he had 300 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns. That's not passing, that's receiving. So it shows you he put up some huge video game numbers this year for the Hippos.
Well, my mentor, that Coach McClendon, he coaches in Texas right now. And, he's a good friend of Gridiron Football's and a good friend with Andy Bryson. But he coaches in the ISD system in Houston, Texas area. And I have a couple buddies that I've coached with in the past that coach in Texas or have coached in Texas. And they produce some really special players with it, but one thing about the state of Texas is there's a lot of throwing the football, a lot of open spread offenses in Texas, but the receivers in Texas, if you watch them in high school football, they can catch the football very well. And that's a great example of it. When you catch the football, it makes everything slow down.
Oh yeah, it does. It does. And this is actually not the only Hutto guy we're going to be talking about on this show. We're going to talk about a teammate of his later on. Our next Gridiron Football Player of the Year nominee, we go to the state of Texas once more. We're going to the quarterback position once more in Kavian Bryant. Kavian Bryant from Westwood High School, as mentioned. He's still a young guy, really young. In fact, he was actually a freshman this past year, class of 2027. And as talented as he is on the football field, he's probably just as talented or even more talented on the basketball court playing for his dad at Westwood High School. But he's a pretty good quarterback himself as well. He completed 158 of 231 passes this season. That's 68% for 2,282 yards and 33 touchdowns. And that's not all. Plus 812 yards on the ground and 9 touchdowns. So add that all together, 3,094 total yards and 42 total touchdowns. Not bad for a player that is coming off his freshman season. So this name, keep an eye on him, Kavian Bryant. He was a Gridiron Football Player of the Week back in Week 8 when he completed 20 of his 25 passes for 290 yards and 5 touchdowns, while also rushing for 2 more touchdowns. This is going to be a very special kid, and he comes in as our next player of Gridiron Football Player of the Year nominee. So their next name is actually our first player that actually played in our Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game. And I know we said a lot of quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, but we're not biased. We're not just offensive guys. We'll go to the defense too. Yeah. It's actually a Grambling signee. So we played in our Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game. Peyton McFarland. He's a linebacker, defensive end, that type of hybrid role, outside linebacker. He plays for McDonald 35 down in New Orleans. He had 73 total tackles, 27 tackles for loss, 15 sacks, 3 fumble recoveries, 2 forced fumbles, and an interception for Coach Frank Daggs. And he was our Player of the Week back in Week 9, I believe. And in that game, he had 6 sacks in a 31-0 win over Frederick Douglass. So, getting to the quarterback, as you saw in our bowl game, we had a lot of really good players on the defensive side of the football. He certainly was one. And anytime he can put up 6 sacks, in one game, have 15 sacks this year, it's just as important as, like, in today's age to have a great pass rusher because of all these great quarterbacks that are around.
When it comes to that position, if you can get to the quarterback, it creates a lot of confusion, and that's one thing with in that interior area is you have to have guys that can get to the quarterback and creating just the simple ways of havoc for a QB during a game for a quarterback changes the outcome most of the time, and that's a great example. And they got some really good coaching that comes out of that part of the state, in the Northeast state. I've had friends that have played or coached up in that part of the state, and they produce some really good kids and some really good players.
And next up, we have going back to offense, we have Dakota Johnson, who is a quarterback athlete, another guy that played in the Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game, runs the option at Oakdale, but he was able to showcase his skills, had over 1,000 yards rushing at quarterback, 600 yards passing, 18 total touchdowns, was our Gridiron Football Player of the Week when he had 367 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns. And he had a passing touchdown, so a 6-touchdown game for him. Also was responsible for 2 two-point conversions. So like I said, if you're a Gridiron Football Player of the Week, you're automatically a Gridiron Football Player of the Year candidate, and he certainly was. So another talented individual that played in our bowl game. We go next, or our next guy, his name's Jamon Dyson. He actually, I think we gave him a nickname. We call him Slicin' Dyson. So we gave him a little bit of nickname there. And I think that's where all his actually classmates and teammates call him now. So you got to get that trademark, if I say Jamon, with that nickname now. Starting to maybe get Gridiron Football something out of it, right? After getting a check mark. But yeah, he was a great player this year for Joel Sumner. He's a guy that can play. You probably stick him in any position, and he would excel at. Defensively, he had 64 tackles, 8 TFLs, 2 sacks, 4 interceptions, including 1 return for a touchdown, 9 PBUs, 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, and then that was just his defensive stats. You go to offense, he had 984 yards of offense and 10 touchdowns. So 4 of them were receiving, 6 of them were rushing. So I mean, he was a guy that whenever he had the ball in his hands, he can pretty much do it. He had 2 interceptions and a pick 6, as well as a touchdown catch in the game, a playoff game, in which we made him a Gridiron Football Player of the Week. So what's even scary is he's a class of 2026 player. Wow. So he's still got another 2 years. So very talented young man that, probably be seeing a lot in our Gridiron Football radar coming up.
Yeah, it's funny. It's just what you were just saying is one of the most attractive things in recruiting is that's an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And a kid that can make plays on both sides of the ball. It's not simple. It's a very difficult part, and when you have that ability to be a playmaker on both areas of the football, that makes you a very attractive player down the road that college coaches will find, and they'll notice those kind of things, and that literally gives the big opportunity to kids.
So we're going to go to Lafayette, to a team that had a lot of success this past season, went all the way to the state championship game. And there's actually 2 players from this team on this list, but I'm going to go with the first one first. This is actually the Cecilia Bulldog that was our player of the week, and it's Corey Broussard, was a running back. And had some good numbers, just over 1,200 yards rushing, 22 touchdowns on the ground for him. And he was our Gridiron Football Player of the Week in the playoffs. I think the second round of the playoffs, had over 200 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns in the game, in a playoff game, which they put 70 points on the board. And that's saying a lot in a playoff game. And he had himself a really good season. Was a Gridiron Football Player of the Week, and he was a pretty good runner this year. And it's actually 3 running backs in a row or Gridiron Football Player of the Year candidates that are from that area alone. So that's one of them. The second one, actually, we didn't have much scoring in our Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game, but we did have a rushing touchdown by this guy, Javane Reese from Northwest High School in Opelousas. So Javane Reese, Northwest has actually had himself a Cinderella year this year. They made it all the way to the semifinals, where they came up 1 game short of going to the state championship for the very first time. And it was this guy, he was kind of like the bell cow for him all year long, got them to the semifinals when he scored a game-winning touchdown in overtime. So Javane Reese had 1,925 rushing yards and 30 touchdowns. I'll tell you what, make it 31 because he scored a touchdown in the Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game this year. So over 30 touchdowns for him. And then he was a Gridiron Football Player of the Week back in Week 13 when he had 176 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns, including the game-winning 2-point conversion to send them to the semifinals. So he was the bell cow and a Gridiron Football All-American to boot. So really good player. And then we go to our third straight running back, Deshaun Ford. And Ben, actually, if you look at Deshaun Ford, you're thinking he's 40 years old and he's not a high school kid because, he's put together. If you want to, have it all Madden, you have Madden, you want to build yourself a running back that looks the part, it's this guy. When he comes off the bus, he looks like it. But he plays like it, too. Opelousas went to the state championship this year, won the state championship this year, and they pretty much rode off the back of this guy, Deshaun Ford. And all the SEC teams, all the Power 5 programs are offering this guy. He still has another year left. He's going to be an upcoming senior 2025 player. And he had himself a record-setting year, 1,797 yards rushing and 30 touchdowns. And they had a pretty good player back at Opelousas High School a long time ago. I think you've heard of him, Devery Henderson.
Oh, yeah.
And he beat a lot of his records this year. So this kid is very special, and obviously he's going to be a Gridiron Football Player of the Year candidate. We actually interviewed him at Media Day at the beginning of the year. He was really hungry to have this type of year, and he did so. So he was a man of his word.
Yeah, I'll tell you, they produced some good players out of that area. Some really talented kids, And when you can contend for a state championship and bring your program to that, deep in the playoff every year and contend like that, that's a very attractive part to what recruiting is. Because when college coaches are evaluating players, they want to not just see what you are, on the field, but they want to see what you are off the field. And when you can be a leader amongst your peers and helping them lead, to contend for state championships and the playoffs. It's aside from just being a good athlete, there's leadership skills, and he's done a great job with that program, and he's got, as being a true leader to his peers and his teammates, and they got, a great run they did last year, and I wish them, nothing but the best on what they got upcoming season, because they got some good players that come out of there.
Yeah, they really do. And now Opelousas area, I mean, that's 3 straight that are Gridiron Football Player of the Year candidates that we just mentioned. And we have another player from the area. I mean, really the biggest winner is obviously the Lafayette Opelousas area, because we have another player now. He's not a running back, but he's a quarterback for him, and that's from Cecilia High School. His name's Diesel, so that's a pretty good name for a football player. Diesel Solari is his name, and he's a really good athlete. Still got another year coming up in 2025. It's just a football player. I mean, look at the numbers: 1,588 yards rushing and 33 touchdowns on the ground. He's the quarterback too, so he also threw for 1,493 yards and 19 touchdowns. So over 3,000 total yards and 52 total touchdowns. It was crazy. He's going to be nominated for Gridiron Football Player of the Year. He was nominated for Player of the Week 4 or 5 times last year, but never won. So he's going to get his opportunity for the whole shebang, the whole deal for Gridiron Football Player of the Year. And there's another guy, him and Corey Broussard, we mentioned earlier. They were teammates, quarterback, running back duo, and both of them are for going to be Player of the Year finalists because they both led Cecilia to the state championship this year. So.
Wow. I tell you, that's a good program over there. And, again, the one thing that I always take, from some of the great coaches and stuff is when, when you can use your players' abilities as a coach, that is such a big role in being a leader as a coach. And he's done a great job with those guys over there. Coach has done a good job. And using that ability of a two-way threat team like that, that really gives you an opportunity every year contending in the playoffs, and you're contending for district championships and state championships. That really gives you an opportunity to contend every year.
Yeah, give a shout out to Coach Dennis Gaines. He's one of our biggest fans of Gridiron Football. They went to our media day at the beginning of the year, and they had himself a great season going all the way to the state championship game. Came up just short to a team we already mentioned, Opelousas. Yeah. But congratulations to a great year for them, and they should be one of the favorites back in that class because a lot of those guys are coming back. So it's really fun to see them. Now, this is a guy that is near and dear to my heart because I covered him each and every week. So maybe a little bias on my side of it, but he actually played in a Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game and was actually the offensive MVP in the game. And it is Episcopal High School running back Braden George, who signed with Navy. And this is a guy that you probably heard up about a whole lot. So he had 186 carries, 1,854 yards, and I called a lot of his touchdowns that year, 28 to be precise, 28 touchdowns this past year was pretty. I pretty much knew when number 4 touched the ball, it was a good chance of him scoring. 28 touchdowns this past year. Gridiron Football All-American, and he's just an All-American in general because guess where he's going to play football? The Naval Academy, so he's serving his country. So talk about what just a great young man. I mean, Navy's getting himself one heck of a running back too, but just a great individual that's just willing to go out and serve his country as well.
Well, he's a good kid. He's a leader. The quarterback for Episcopal, I worked with in his youth days, and he's a great kid, and Zach. So I've paid attention to them from an outside, and I know you do a great part of that program too over there. I'll tell you what, they've produced some really good players out of Episcopal. The coach over there has done a great job. I coached against him in past years, and he builds a consistency with his athletes every year. And great, I use that that word a lot. Developing the player. Well, that's a great example of a kid who's truly got a great leadership ability, and he's going to a great place to pursue the next 4 years as an athlete.
Yeah.
Of what he's done as a high school athlete.
Yeah, special young man, over a 4.0 GPA, and just a great young man. So like Navy's got himself an absolute stud, both on and off the field, coming to the program. Talking about getting a stud is what the Raging Cajuns are about to get for our next player, and that's Jacorian Norris, who is another Gridiron Football All-American, and saw it when he signed with the Raging Cajuns. Appreciate the UL Twitter account tagging us on it and saying he's a Gridiron Football All-American and he's going to sign with the Raging Cajuns. And Jacorian Norris, I've been saying I think it's LSU, Alabama. I think he's that good. So the Raging Cajuns, boy, did they get themselves a steal here. So shows you what kind of playmaker he is. On defense, 91 tackles, 7 interceptions.
Wow.
Every time he not only had 7 interceptions, but he was a threat to score. He had 5 return for touchdowns of those 7 interceptions.
Wow.
And he had 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, and then guess what? He also had 5 kickoff return touchdowns and a punt return for a touchdown.
Wow.
So every time he scored 11 touchdowns in 3 different ways, and we didn't even mention offense. So it shows you what kind of player he is with the ball in his hands in the bowl game. He had 2 of the biggest hits that you'll find. I think everybody in the Memorial Stadium was oohing and eyeing after seeing him hit a couple of guys in the bowl game. So he can do it all. Return kicks, return punts, play receiver. We saw him play in 7-on-7 at the beginning of the year. He can play receiver. He can return kicks, punts, play defense. He's the whole package. And the Raging Cajuns got themselves a good one, Jacorian Norris.
Yeah, I tell you what, that program has done a great job. I knew Levi Lewis that played there years back, quarterback, and had worked with Levi a little bit in college, and so that's great for the Raging Cajuns. They've had some special seasons throughout the last 10 years of what it's become over there of winning, and now they got a great leader coming to the play for their program that can do big things for them.
And give a shout out to Doug and Chuck, too, who do a lot of our announcing for our Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game, a lot of our coverage over at 446 Sports. They can tell you the same thing. They covered this man a whole lot at Tioga, so they covered a lot of his games there, and I'm sure they agree with me that the Raging Cajuns are getting themselves a really good player. But we're going over to Texas again, so we're going back and forth between Louisiana and Texas. But you're going to like this one because he's a gunslinger, he's a quarterback, and a perfect representation of if you're a good quarterback in Texas. Well, if you sign with Texas Tech, I mean, that shows you what kind of good player you really are. Will Hammond from Hutto again. So you heard about Alex Green, the receiver that had over 100 catches this year. This is the guy who threw him the ball, and he put up some huge numbers. You think the receiver put some big numbers up? Wait till you hear Will's final stats. He had just shy of 4,000 yards passing, 35 touchdowns. Also was a good runner. Ran for over 1,000 yards on the ground and 19 touchdowns. Put that all together, a little short of 5,000 yards and 54 total touchdowns. And then talk about just a video game type number. There was one game where he threw for 10 touchdowns in one game. I think it was that game where it was like 82-80.
Wow.
I think he was on the losing end of it. Wow. So it shows you how impressive that really is for a guy to put those type of numbers up. And I know Texas Tech is really really ecstatic to get a guy like that. Yeah,
they got some really special quarterbacks that have come out of there. And my mentor, he's like I said, he coaches in the Houston, Texas area. And they've had some good quarterbacks he's produced where he's coached at. But he's always told me about, the quarterbacks that have come out of the state of Texas. It goes back to the Art Briles days. There's always been some really consistent quarterbacks come out of there, and they have a lot of competitive quarterback camps and stuff that come out of the state of Texas. So these quarterbacks get a great opportunity to really show their ability year round, and with the 7-on-7 leagues and things like that. And you can tell that those programs are starting from the youth up that develop these quarterbacks that we see year in, year out.
Can you imagine? Like, you're a quarterback guy yourself. Can you imagine throwing for 800 yards and 10 touchdowns
10
and
touchdowns,
still lose the game?
Yeah. That's something right there.
That's just amazing. But I mean, it shows you what kind of quarterback he really is, and how the game of football is really kind of going right now too. The way the game is going. But we go back to the ground game, and this is Andy Bryson's going to love this one because this was actually, we had a Gridiron Football draft for All-American Bowl game. This was Andy's first overall pick of the draft. The whole draft was this guy, Caden Dixon. Wow. He's a running back from Center, Texas, signed with Northern Arizona. Really good kid, really good player. Another kid that just looks the part. I mean, he looks the part of a big time Division I running back. I think Northern Arizona got themselves a steal. And this is another guy, and I think maybe the transfer portal has to do with that too. But this is a type of kid that probably would be 10 years, 15 years ago, would be signed D1. But he signed with Northern Arizona, or signed Power 5. But he had 1980, so just a little short of 2,000, 1,980 yards rushing, 23 touchdowns, and the year before was even a bigger season. He ran for like 3,000 yards. But I think a lot of people were keying in on Caden Dixon this year when teams are going up against Center, Texas. But was a Gridiron Football All-American. I think he ran for like 6,000 yards and like 60 touchdowns in his career overall for a small school in Texas. So great football player. It was really exciting covering him and seeing him. And what's really cool, Ben, is we actually got to see him back we had a camp in Bossier right before the camp at Covington. He came back and actually helped out at the camp, was helping out with the 40s, was helping out with the kids, giving them some words of advice to them on how to get better, and was really helping the younger generation because he knew that he was just like them. So it's really cool seeing a guy like that who played in our bowl game, that's going to play college football, come back and kind of help the kids at our camp. So it shows you what kind of kid he is.
Yeah, that's such an important area. You can't even harp that. My brother had the good fortune. This is a different sport, but obviously, athletics is athletics. But my brother played for Roger Kadar, who is one of the greatest college baseball coaches, probably of that era he was in, and he taught my brother so much about understanding what being a leader is, and that's hard to teach. Because sometimes you can give an athlete 1,000 different ways to be a leader, but it's his choice. It's his choice, and that becomes a natural ability. And what he did for that was a great example of that, and that's going to help out in his future.
Yep. By the way, the correct number 45. So 4,560 yards rushing, 61 touchdowns, and that's really over a 2-year period, really. Wow. So very incredible numbers he put up. So this is another player that Gridiron Football has worked a lot with in the past. It's Jackson Bradley. He's a quarterback up at Oak Grove High School. And talk about winning. All this kid does is win. He's won back-to-back state championships, and he's going to be he's already a really good one. He's right now committed to Louisiana Tech to play up in Tech for Sonny Cummey.
Oh, wow.
So he's a really good football player. This past year, he had over 3,000 yards of total offense. Had 43 total touchdowns to his credit. He's actually worked with Marcus Randall in the past too. So really big kid. His dad played tight end at LSU, Louisiana Tech. Was a great player at Oak Grove himself. But he's trying to go for 3 straight state championships, I believe. So a kid that's won a lot, and that's the most important stat you really need in football.
Yeah. I mean, that being a coach's son, yeah. and winning is a very huge attribute to that stuff, and I know anybody that works with Marcus Randall is able to really, Marcus to me is really one of the best private quarterback coaches aside, I have a lot of respect for Marcus as a coach because we had coached for with 2 years together. But one thing about Marcus is quarterbacks he's worked with privately, he's done an incredible job with on the scheme system he teaches kids coming back or going back from his college days playing for Coach Saban and getting coached by Jimbo Fisher for 5 years. During that time state of when he played for him, that really to me is something that it really makes him a gifted guy. And so that kid really took some great instructional work learning that from Coach Randall, and he's got a lot of special ability. I've seen film of him, and he can really throw the football.
Yeah, and I believe that's 4 state championships in 5 years for Oak Grove. So it shows that they've been winning a lot of championships at that level. Ryan Gregory has done a phenomenal job with that program. And Jackson Brown has a chance to add another one. If he gets 3 straight, gets another one, you got to put him in as far as one of the most successful high school football coaches ever in the state of Louisiana, if not so already. We just have 5 more names go off, and I'll be our Player of the Year list. So these are going to be down to these 25 guys. We're going back to Texas again. DJ Bailey, he's a quarterback from one of the top programs in Texas, DeSoto High School. And he's actually going to play for Sam Houston, was one of the top programs, college football programs in FCS level. I know they're making the jump to FBS. But it's going to be a really good transition for him to have a guy like that really being the gunslinger for them. So this past year, he's had himself a historic career over for the Eagles. He's thrown for 3,366 yards passing, 44 touchdowns, ran just shy of 300 yards rushing, and 5 touchdowns. So 49 touchdowns overall for DJ Bailey. And I know the Bearcats get themselves a really good player. He's put some video game numbers up, not only this year, but the last year as well.
Yeah, they've got some good players that have come out of that area of DeSoto and stuff. I've had friends that have coached and played in the areas of that not far from there, and they produce some really good players. And Sam Houston's a great program that's really going to have, be getting a good player. I know that DeSoto's always been consistent at producing year in year out good high school football players, and when you can produce the kind of player developmental system that they have from youth up at a program like DeSoto, it's going to really produce some good kids out there, and they do that. And Sam Houston's got a good player ahead of them.
How about this? 7,000 yards, just a little bit over 7,000 yards passing, 89 touchdowns in just 2 years. So that's really over a 2-year span right there. And then let's see who else we have. We have Jacoby Jefferson is a running back. Was also a Gridiron Football All-American for us. He played for Pearl River. He's going to play for Pearl River coming up. He signed with them after this year. Played in their bowl game. Had put some video game numbers up for the Spartans this year. Just close to 2,000 yards rushing. Had 1,916 yards rushing and 25 touchdowns. And this guy is just fun to watch. You put the highlight tape on, you think you're watching like Reggie Bush or Barry Sanders or something like that. Very fun guy to watch, and I know he's going to be doing a whole lot first at the JUCO level, and we'll see what he does after that. Because that could be a really good stepping stone in the next couple of years to see him maybe with a Division I program after that.
Yeah, that's a great junior college program over there too. They've produced some good players, and one thing kids sometimes don't realize, and this is so much about just learning how recruiting works and all that, and what's the best fit for you. Junior college football is an opportunity sometimes that can be a better situation for your, for what's ahead of you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it takes getting more developed as a player, and going and playing junior college can help kids like that, and that's a great junior college program out in Mississippi that's competes at a very high level with other junior colleges surrounding the state of Mississippi. And again, if you get an opportunity to play anything past high school, don't ever take that opportunity lightly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Any football is something. Like it doesn't matter if you're signed at Division I level or you're signed with the NAIA level. There's only a limited amount of scholarships to go around, and how many high school kids there are in the country just get the opportunity to play football somewhere whether it's LSU, Alabama, or if it's a prep school. I mean, it's still football at college level, and that's something that not a lot of people can do.
Yeah.
So we're going to our next player, and this is a very special player, another defensive guy. So this is actually, you go back and read this article, go to GridironFootballUSA.com. One of the best individuals I've ever got a chance to talk to, and son of a pastor. So you got that natural leadership. Really, he's just oozing that. That natural leadership he does possess. But it was a Gridiron Football All-American. And I got a chance to see him throughout the practice, and you just look at him. I mean, there's nothing special. He's not 6'3". He's not 250. He doesn't run like a 4.3. He's not one of those type guys. But he's just a football player and just a leader. I mean, talk about playing on heart. This is the definition of this guy. Pretty quick story. When I saw this guy play, we're getting ready for a practice, and it was really early in the morning. I was doing a lot of stuff, a lot of work on the back end, and it was 5 o'clock in the morning in the hotel lobby, and I expect nobody to be down there. There was no coaches down there, nothing. It was just me and whoever's running the clerk at the front desk, and here he coming down the hall with his Bible, getting a cup of coffee, sitting down, and it was 5 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
It was pretty crazy seeing that. But Zeke Carlisle, he's from Alabama. He is from Huntsville, Alabama. Only about 5'10", 195 pounds. But talk about a tackling machine. He had over 530 career tackles in high school. And then this year alone, talk about that's a career. This year alone, what he did, 205 tackles in 1 year. 205 tackles, 26 TFLs, 7 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions, 2 pass breakups, a fumble recovery, and a sack. And it shows you that he's like the Energizer Bunny. He's always going, and he's full throttle from the very first play to the final whistle. He's that type of guy.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, they produce some good football players out of that state. Like I said, my high school coach actually played linebacker, and he was a very good high school linebacker, and got to play a little bit of college football. And the state of Alabama has always been consistent at the type of football players they produce. My brother actually trained a guy that not long ago in his private sector business and baseball or athletic performance that played high school football in Alabama, and when I ran into him not long ago, we were talking about the caliber of players that come out of there. There's a lot of good football players come out of Alabama, and sometimes it's we got so many states out there. A lot of people know the Gulf South has a lot of talent in general, but Alabama's got some of the better talent in the country that comes out of there year in year out. But for the consistent part, they have great coaching. Great coaching comes out of the state of Alabama, and hearing tackle numbers like that is the example of the type of players that are getting produced. They're getting great instructional development every day in high school football.
And we have 2 more players to go off of, and I'll complete our list. Another guy, he's another Gridiron Football All-American that played in our bowl game. His name's James Owens. He's a running back from Pine High School in Franklinton. We had a lot of really good running backs this year, and he is another one. He had 1,665 yards of all-purpose yards, 1,000 yards rushing, 652 yards receiving, and 25 touchdowns too. So he was kind of doing it all. Really good football player there, and was in our bowl game. Went to a lot of our camps. Really good player. He's going to play for Louisiana College. So. Really good football player, and that's going to be a steal for him at that level.
Yeah, it will be. They're doing a great job over at that program. Going 9-1 like they did last year, and making a run at that conference championship. So they've got a steal, and what you just said, and that these kind of numbers are very, very showing that these kind of players have a lot of future ahead of them, and to the fan base watching, this isn't a true example of some really good talent that comes out of our state and the nearby states. That colleges are getting under the radar. still in prospects, and I mean that in a humbling way. But getting good football players that really have a really bright future ahead of them, that are really coming from great player development systems, and really have really good teachers of the game that are teaching these kids what's the right areas of life outside of just the white lines.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I actually forgot another player, so we got 2 more left. Zary Jones is a running back from Gina, and he actually helped Gina have one of their best years ever. They made it really far in the playoffs this past year, were the number 1 seed, went undefeated in the regular season. He had Zary Jones as a running back, 1,965 yards rushing, 32 touchdowns. So had a lot of touchdowns, a lot of yards, and really helped Gina have a lot of success this year. He still hasn't signed with a college. He played in a Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game, so we're hoping Zarek gets the opportunity. He had a lot of really big numbers this year, showcase what he can do on the football field. So, hey, colleges, you need a running back that was very successful and just has really good vision and a good burst. Well, this is your guy still out there. So just a little shy of 2,000 yards. Had a great career for Gina. Same school as Dre Jenkins, who went to LSU. Had himself a good career there. So really good football player out there at Gina. And then finally, our last candidate for Gridiron Football Player of the Year is Devon Keys. He is a two-way player. He's also going to play. Being an LSU beat writer, I have to end with another LSU signee. Devon Keys is another LSU signee, expected to play linebacker at LSU. Played for Aledo High School, which is another big program in Texas. Has done a lot. Has been really successful. Has done a lot of really big things. This past year, he definitely stuffed the stat sheet on both sides. He had 169 tackles, 23 TFLs, 5 sacks, 12 QB hurries, 3 interceptions, 1 pick six, 3 fumble recoveries, a block punt, a block field goal, and 17 touchdowns on offense. So, talking about stuff in the stat sheet, Devon Keys definitely did that. LSU got themselves a really good one, and also a state champion as well, defensive MVP. He did pretty much whatever you can think of in high school. Devon Keys definitely did it. So they're a good player in Texas.
Yeah, I tell you, they've produced some good players, and I played and passed with guys from that state, and like I said, my mentor, he coaches there right now, and I've seen some really good players. But one thing, I have a friend that I actually coached with. That he coaches at the University of North Texas right now, and his name's Coach Joshua Kirkland. He's the head of player personnel there, and we coached together in 2013 at Christian Life, and he's a great recruiter for them. But one thing he kind of always told me was, in Texas they have such a system that starts at such a young age there, that is really a big advantage for those kids that come out of that program, or come out of those programs there, that really give kids a lead up or a leg up of getting prepared from youth football up, and that kid's got a lot of future ahead of him.
Absolutely, for sure. It was really, those are your 25 candidates. Well, actually a little bit more than that, but around that number. Let's just say that. Never been a math whiz, so a little bit around that number. But all these guys have an opportunity to be a Gridiron Football Player of the Year. In order for them to be the Gridiron Football Player of the Year, that's when y'all, the fans, have to vote. So we're going to open voting. As soon as you see this video, the link is up on our website. So make sure you go to gridironfootballusa.com. It'll be the first thing that you'll see. Actually, the link to where you can vote is in the video description. So go to the description in the video. You can press the link, and I'll send you to where you can vote. You can vote as many times as possible. Yeah. So if you're a parent that wants to vote 1,000,000 times, you can vote 1,000,000 times. There's no limit. So we're going to open voting for a whole week, since it is the Player of the Year. We're going to make sure y'all get as much time, much chances as possible to vote, since it is the Player of the Year. And just in case you're wondering, what does the Player of the Year get? Well, if you're a Player of the Week, you're going to get a Letterman patch already. So we're making them as we speak. So if you're a Player of the Week, you're already going to get that. So that'll be something cool you can put on your Letterman jacket. And then you also get a bigger patch if you win the Player of the Year. You get a big patch on your letterman jacket. Will be pretty cool if you're an underclassman that won it. You can show that off in school. Say, hey, I was a Gridiron Football Player of the Year. And you're a player, this is really good practice too. If you're a Player of the Year nominee, we mentioned your name on the show, this would be really good exposure for you to promote that and get as many people behind you in your community as possible to help vote for you, which is something that I know that we've talked about before. But a lot of these guys we mentioned on the show, reason they're in this place reason they're here in the first place to begin with is because they went out, had social media, and made sure to promote their name in order for them to get chances like that. So if you're a high school player that really wants to be serious about competing at the next level, getting awards, getting accolades, getting a chance to play college football, make sure, if you haven't done so, make sure to make a Twitter or X account now. Make sure you beef up your social media. It's one thing also to make it, but also be professional about it. Post your highlights, post your visits. Be frank with, hey, coach, I'm looking for an opportunity. Post your highlights. That way, college coaches can come and actively find you. And not only college coaches, but media as well. They can go and have a chance to contact you and interview you to get your name out there even more. And this day of age is so important to do.
You can't harp that enough. Like we talk about, in the time state we've been working together, how important social media is for exposure. Because I was a high school coach, and sometimes high school coaches, head coaches, there's a lot on their plate on a daily basis. So sometimes there's things that under the rug, and I mean this on a serious, humbling way, but there's guys that are the diamond in the rough, and they get they get lost to the shuffle a lot. So you have to expose yourself. I can't harp that enough. There is so many colleges out there. If you don't, people might not know this, but you have, all these different levels of college football, from Division III to Division II, FCS, FBS, NAIA, Ivy League, junior college, prep school programs. You accumulate all those together, that is an insane number of that gives opportunity. But then you hear that a lot of it's a lot, but it's not a lot, because there's more kids beyond the numbers that attend that can fill a roster. So you cannot harp this enough, how you have to get exposure. And when you get on your social page, like he was saying with Twitter, that's one of the most seen areas for recruiting. You have all these other areas of social media, from Facebook and all the other ones, and Instagram and the Snapchats and all that other stuff. But Twitter is a very seen area in recruiting. It's always been known for that. We've talked about that. And so if you can really, keep that up to date. And other part to those social medias, and I will tell anybody this, or any kid this, you have to be very wise what you put on there. Because those college coaches watch that. They see that stuff. Friends of mine that have coached college, they've told me they look at that stuff on a player. They want to know if you're making comments or you're posting stuff that's inappropriate. That stuff's going to be seen. But one thing, with that, you have to get yourself out there. You have to be seen. And it's very hard. My brother was drafted as a professional athlete, and my brother was a 3-time All-American in college, and my brother was still a diamond in the rough getting drafted. So that just kind of gives an example. As a professional athlete, it's even a different level than the next. But obviously, you got to focus on the little parts to getting exposure that ends up becoming the big parts. There's something that Marcus Randall always said, and when we worked with quarterbacks, if you aim small, you miss small, but if you aim big, you miss big. So you got that little part of a Twitter page. It might be to some people not the biggest thing, but it's if you aim small, you miss small. You aim big, you miss big. That's saying you being smart and wise about how you do those kind of things. Because like you were saying, getting yourself out there and then being very professional as a student athlete to college coaches and the ones that are recruiting you. That's so important. How you make the type of posts you make, and then obviously being consistent about your post. Letting people colleges know who you are so they can get exposure and be under the spotlight. Get a scholarship offer, an opportunity to be invited to walk on.
Yeah, and it's narrowed down so much because of the transfer portal that there's only so many opportunities there is now out there, and with how everybody now, as the patience is growing short now in college football, like if you don't win in 2 years, you could be out of a job. So now, college coaches, if you're thinking about it, they're looking at kids. Okay, we're betting on kids for a program. So, like, looking through their social media, looking like what you post, who you follow. These are like, okay, if I my job's on the line, can I bank on you? So that's really the biggest thing now that they're looking at, and they're looking for mature young men, not only that can play. Obviously, you gotta play. I mean, you gotta be really good at it, but also, do you have the character? Do you take care of what you needed to take care of in the classroom? Or do you help community service? What you do off the field? They look at not only what you do on the field but off the field as well, because they gotta see what kind of person they're investing in as well, not just the on field stuff.
Yeah, you can't harp that enough. And the one thing is when it comes to being that athlete. That's just a small part of the recruiting process. Those college coaches want to know the other part. What kind of man are you? What kind of leader are you? Well, how are you in the classroom? Are you a good stewardess? There's a lot of that process that's way aside from the white lines, and those kind of areas is so important to understand as a student athlete. That when you fall into a direction of making a wrong post on a social media or how you carry yourself in the classroom, that will be seen. Colleges do see that stuff. And that's very important to always understand as a student athlete, because you're a leader. You're an ambassador to your school, to the community, and your high school coaches that you play for. When they harp these things, they're not doing that just to say it. They're doing it because they want to see you become a better leader and a better man. And eventually, that's got a purpose to what this game really shows every day we watch it and the game of football. But what you just said, that's the true reasoning to why gridiron football exists is to give an understanding to how important this is. And I know you being a high school coach's son, your dad coaching for as many years as he did, and I have so much utmost respect for your dad and how many times he saw players do one small thing wrong, and not intentionally, but one little baby mistake, and that could affect the outcome of something. And so following that strict understanding as a student athlete that you are a leader, you can't harp that enough every day.
Absolutely, Ben. Benjamin Hall is going to be helping us a lot here at Gridiron Football, so you're going to be seeing him around a lot with myself and Andy and the whole crew here at Gridiron Football. So, it was fun talking with you, Ben, as well, and talking about the Gridiron Football Player of the Year nominees as well. So when this video is eventually up, that means voting has begun. So go and click the link in the description, vote for your player, spread the word, make sure that as many people as possible get a chance to see it. So it's unlimited, so if you're the mom of a player, you can vote 1,000,000 times, and it would certainly help. So make sure you spread the word, and we'll see what the best community backs up their guy, and see who the Gridiron Football Player of the Year is. I think it's really cool to get the fans involved with it, get the audience involved with it too, and that way it puts less pressure on us to try to come up with a winner after all those great names. That's 25 great players that are well deserving of getting a chance to be a Gridiron Football Player of the Year. So make sure you vote, do your community, help out a young individual that's in your community, and get them an extra. I mean, a lot of these players are really well-rounded already, well-accomplished. So make sure to get them an extra accomplishment, extra award there. So for Benjamin Hall, I'm Jace LeJeune from Gridiron Football. Good luck to everybody out there. We'll start and we'll actually interview the top five, and obviously we'll interview the Gridiron Football Player of the Year. Gridiron Football Player of the Week winners, they will get a letterman patch. And Gridiron Football Player of the Year, well, they get themselves a bigger Gridiron Football Player of the Year patch. There's only one of those, so we'll see which player gets a chance to win that. So, till next time, I'm Jace LeJeune saying so long. We'll see you next time on another edition of a Gridiron Football Player of the Week and Player of the Year show.